Hey, thanks for stopping by my neck of the woods. I'm the GigGeezer in Wood Lane, and when I'm out there driving, I'm out there to make some money. I want to help you maximize your gig hustle. I've seen a few uploads by others on their respective channels in which they described the things they wish they would have known when they first started in the gig economy. I guess you can call it the do's and don'ts of their hustle. The GigGeezer is no different. And here's my contribution as well, as I hope to maximize your hustle, whether you're new in the gig economy or whether you're searching YouTube for the first time for information that can help you get you up to speed, or whether you've been around for a while and you're looking for some kind of edge to help you along as well. The points I'll share are based on my personal experience on the food delivery apps. Initially, I started in 2019 on Postmates, and I later added DoorDash that year. I'll be the first to say that my initial experiences on both apps did not go too well. In fact, my first Postmates delivery was at a Red Robin's in a mall area. Not knowing anything, I was dumb enough to wait 45 minutes for that order to be completed, only to make about $4 and probably no tip, if I recall correctly. In fact, I'm wondering, why in the world did I get on with Postmates anyway? But I think I understand why I did. On one of the gig driver Facebook pages, there was a guy who bragged openly about the success that he had doing Postmates and Uber and Lyft up in the Charlotte market. And he showed receipts of him making at least $100 a day whenever he would go up to Charlotte doing Postmates. So I think that's what piqued my curiosity. I also learned about DoorDash by others, as whenever I would go to do a Postmates pickup, I would see people come in with their red bags, and I'm thinking that, I'd see a lot more of them than people like me doing Postmates. And so I figured, well, maybe I need to look into DoorDash as well. Well, DoorDash is just as bad. I famously shared with others how after my first 3 deliveries, I had a 2.33 driver rating. That's right, a 2.33 driver rating after my first 3 completed deliveries. In fact, I struggled probably for at least my first 500 deliveries before I began to see the type of progress that would suggest that maybe I just might make it. In fact, at one point early on, I was so disappointed by my driver rating that I stopped doing DoorDash for about 6 months before I resumed it again. When I resumed doing DoorDash in January 2020, I was aware of the 4.2 driver rating that we must maintain in order to avoid deactivation. Now, it took me the entire first 100 deliveries that DoorDash allows for new drivers for me to get above the 4.2 threshold. But then, as I mentioned, it took me about 500 deliveries to get a hang of what I need to do with DoorDash, but it took me about 1,100 completed deliveries before I had a rating in which I was in the green, which was about a 4.70 rating. In fact, my struggling so bad as a driver with my rating was the reason why I actually got on YouTube to find information to help me out. And the first channel that I saw that provided useful content was Bentley Coop's DoorDash Diary. So, what are some of the lessons that I've learned in the gig economy, specifically doing food deliveries? Well, first thing I learned was don't consume yourself with your acceptance rate. That's right, do not consume yourself with your acceptance rate. In the beginning, I was concerned about every category being in green with high marks, every single one of them. But I found that in keeping a very high acceptance rate, I had a very low rating, I wasn't making any money, and DoorDash was not as cool as I thought it was going to be for me. Now, I will say before I further comment that in the time that I've done DoorDash on a more active basis, I have seen some improvement in DoorDash's metrics for the driver's ratings. There was a time though where the driver got bashed for everything involved with the delivery, whether the food was bad, items were missing, it took too long, you missing condiments, you name it, the driver bore the brunt. In fact, I recall early on, probably just before the pandemic and all, where I got a 1-star rating because there were missing breadsticks. However, the bag was already sealed. So how would I have known that there were missing breadsticks? Now, as I mentioned, it seemed the higher my acceptance rate, the lower my rating, and the less money I made. So this is something that I learned not by watching YouTube, but by actual experience. I noticed as I stopped accepting every order, first of all, I found that it was okay. But secondly, I was making more money because I wasn't taking those bad orders. Thirdly, I was also helping myself by not delivering to what often were problem customers. So there was some type of correlation what I noticed. In fact, I made a notation of that to myself when I used to keep a very detailed record of my driver rating. The next thing I learned while as a relatively new driver was limiting my communication with the customers. Now there's a lot of thought about this. There's a lot of discussion, a lot of discourse about this. But in my personal opinion, it's not worth it to let the customer know every single detail of what's going on with the delivery. I have found in my market, all the customer cares about is you getting there with their food in a timely manner. Unless there's something really, really wrong, you don't need to introduce yourself as your driver. You don't have to do as I did in the beginning, asking them if there's any change to their order or if there's any extra condiments that they want and all that. In fact, at one time, I was like from the old Good Time show, Lenny from JCPenney, because if I ain't had it, there wasn't any. I had every type of condiment in a bag that I kept. I had the duck sauce, the soy sauce, the hot sauce, ketchup, barbecue sauce, mustard, mayonnaise, you name it, I had it. Then I also had another bag, napkins, forks, spoons, knives, combination packets. I even had, if the restaurant didn't provide it, I had even their issued cup holders. And I found that, well, actually, it wasn't even necessary. But the thing that stopped me though was the pandemic, because I was no longer able to keep a steady inventory of those things because the restaurants kept everything among themselves behind the counter. I did all those things supposedly with taking on a good and professional approach as this delivery driver. And all I ended up getting was no extra tips, and my driver rating still suffered. Another thing that I learned since the beginning of my foray into the delivery portion of gig work is that I should have been equipped with cup holders, or I should have equipped myself with cup holders. Now, going back to those first 3 DoorDash deliveries, I recall having my flimsy, brand new, crisply red DoorDash bag, and I put the cup of whatever it was, soda, let's just say soda, at the bottom of the bag, and I put the bag of food on top. It was encased in a plastic bag. And by the time I got to the door, a portion of that drink has spilled inside the bag. I deserved that 1 star. That's all I can say. But most of the cup holders that the restaurants provide, they really should only be used if you are a passenger and you're holding them in your lap. They should not be used put in the back seat or on the passenger seat. You know, I've heard of people putting a seat belt over them and all, or trying to cover them, or at least shield them with the bag of food the bag that you use to carry the food. None of that works when you hit the brakes. And what's your reaction when that occurs? I thought so. That's happened to me as well. One of the best decisions I made was looking into having cup holders of my own. And initially, I found some under the former Postmates in their driver portal, and we were able to get them for $5. Best decision I made. Now, when I was unable to find any more of the cup holders from Postmates for the $5, I looked on Amazon and eBay, and yes, you have to pay more, but it is a good investment. Now, I know there are other versions of them, but the version that I have, I feel works very well for me. And currently I have 4 in my vehicle. So that means conceivably I can haul as many as 24 cups of whatever it is, shakes, sodas, tea, you name it, Slurpees, you name it. But the most I've ever had to take with me in one order was somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 to 10. But it was a good thing that I had them. Now this ties in with the previous point now with the cup holders. Most of the gig apps, in fact all of them, do provide you with bags, hot cold bags. Now, and it's clearly obvious that somebody is new by the crisp newness of their bag and all. But I really don't want nobody to know my business. I don't want nobody to know that I'm delivering for DoorDash or Grubhub or Bite Squad or Uber Eats. I don't want them to know. So I invested in my own bags. In fact, these are the same bags that these app companies actually provide you, but it's just something about having your own stuff. And so I noticed that as I go to these restaurants, many of them are surprised that I actually come in with a food bag and with a cup holder, when in fact you're supposed to do that at every delivery. In fact, it is in the terms of agreement that you are supposed to arrive with a food bag. You're not supposed to show up as you are, take the bag, and then put it in your car. Or as one time I saw early on, somebody just put it in their trunk. No, you're not supposed to do that. In fact, the restaurants are supposed to report you, and they are supposed to refuse you taking that food from the restaurant. That is what they say. But that's another thing. Investing in myself by getting cup holders and getting food bags. In fact, currently I have 6 food bags. But the reason why I got those food bags on my own is because I had qualified to do DoorDash catering deliveries, or what they call drive orders. And drive orders require that you have at least one of those large size hot cold bags. Well, knowing that I was gonna need at least more than one, I bought 3. And then over time, I bought 3 more. So, and I have found that I've needed to use as many as all 6 in certain situations. Another thing that I have learned since my initial foray into the food delivery portion of the gig hustle is not all promotions are good promotions. Quite simply, what you need to do is the math. And in my opinion, many of those promotions are nothing but thirst bait. Now, some of these promotions are pretty straightforward, and then some are incentivized. The ones that are straightforward are like Uber Eats Quest. You get, say, $3 for each delivery. But then the ones that are incentivized, you must meet a certain completion threshold. You must meet a certain acceptance and completion threshold, usually a minimum of 80%, and in some cases 90%, before you qualify for, as like Grubhub like to do sometimes, earn $14 for every 5 deliveries. If you complete at least 80% or 90% of your deliveries. So for an extra $2.80, this is what you need to do. Well, none of that excites me, because hey, it's just like in my video intros. Hey, when I'm out there driving, I'm out there to make some money. I'm not concerned about those incentives, because hey, if I do what I'm supposed to do, if I get them, fine. If I don't, fine. The other thing that I learned about these promotions or these incentives is that early on, for example, with DoorDash, you had to maintain at least an 80% completion rate of the orders that you accepted in order to qualify for that extra $1 or that extra $1.50 or $2 or $3. So that meant you had to accept and complete a lot of really junk orders in order to get that so-called extra money. Now, is it really worth it to go through all that stuff? I don't think so. And so again, I like to think that that's thirst bait. But then there's these other incentives that I've seen. In fact, I'm using an example from DoorDash portal, but also maybe massaging the numbers. Let's do an example. Earn at least $2,750 for your first 400 deliveries that must be completed in your first 20 days. Okay, now do the math. 400 deliveries in 20 days. That means you gotta do 20 deliveries a day. That's a full day. If you've been around, doing 20 deliveries is pretty much a full day's work. And so that means you gotta be out there every day, pretty much. If you put in 8 hours, 9 hours, you're gonna have to be out there every single day. At least that's my thinking. But here's the thing. All right, so you earn $2,700. You're supposed to earn $2,750, but then you have to read further. That amount is really what you. All right. So what it means is that if you earn only $2,000 for those 400 deliveries in the first 20 days, DoorDash would kick in $750 so that you're guaranteed of making that $2,750. So you have to ask yourself, is it really worth it? But someone like me, I'm gonna make on average somewhere between $10 to $12 each order. Now, if I do the math there, 10 times 400 is $4,000. 12 times 400 is $4,800. I won't see any incentive because I've made too much money as it is. So all it is that it's just getting you out there to accept a bunch of orders that you may not otherwise accept. And that's what I call thirst bait. What you're gonna find is that pretty much there are some things that I've shared that may be universal or very common, and then there's some things that I've shared that just may be personal to me. But in any case, I'm sure that we all, when we look back, there are a lot of things that we wish we would have done differently. For me, it was the cup holders, it was the hot cold bags, it was not falling for the promotions, it was the communication with the customers. But again, everyone is different, but hopefully what I share with you will help you maximize your gig hustle. And until next time, I'm the GigGeezer in Wood Lane, and may your hustle continue. Thank you for checking out this segment of the GigGeezer. If you like the content that's been provided, hey, hit that subscribe button and also give it a thumbs up. And if you have any questions or useful information that you'd like to pass on to the GigGeezer, I can be reached at GigGeezer3.5 @gmail.com.